Welcome to On the Verge. This is Zach Spettin, joined as always by Bob Phelan and Nick Stevens. And on tonight's episode, we react to our discussion with Orioles hitting coach Matt Borg-Salty, which took place earlier today and is now available publicly on YouTube and will be part of our main podcast when that drops after tonight. In addition, we're going to discuss the promotions news headlined by Colton Cowser, Kobe Mayo, and Connor Norby going from Aberdeen to Bowie. And then we also have some listener questions we're going to get into and cover the strong performances of Jordan Westberg and Gunnar Henderson at AAA Norfolk. That's on tonight's episode, but we'll start first with our interview with Orioles co-hitting coach Matt Borg-Salty. We pre-recorded that interview today, and we had a pretty wide-ranging discussion. Talked not only about some of the individual players in the Orioles this year, but overall organizational philosophy and some of the work that he and Ryan Fuller as co-hitting coaches are putting in with the players at the major league level. So, Bob, what was kind of your takeaways from the interview?
I thought it was cool to just talk to a major league coach, which might be first for us. And it's just cool to get some insight. He gave good, concise answers, which made me a little worried that we didn't have enough questions to ask him, but we made it work. We got good 20 minutes out of that, but no fault of his own. It was good answers, and we just needed to come up with some more questions. But yeah, I think he's just as positive on the developments at the major league side of the swing decision path that players are making individually and overall as a group. So yeah, I think there's plenty to be excited about in at the major league level for once, for the first time in quite a while. And he spoke to that pretty clearly.
Yeah, I mean, the two things that I really liked from the piece there, though, were, without trying to give away too much there for people who haven't listened yet, but that culture of in this whole system from top to bottom where it's okay to fail. And he seemed really excited when he was talking about that. The way they're able to interact with these players, specifically these hitters, and let them know that, they are going to fail, but what are they going to learn from that? And so it seemed like there's the lines of communication are wide open in this organization, no matter which area we're talking about. And the fact that I like in the very beginning, when he said, him and Ryan aren't in competition to see who gets the credit. They don't care who gets the credit. This is a true team effort that they are working on up here. So I think just from it, like Bob said, it's really cool to talk to a major league coach. That's the first time we've gotten a major league guy on the show. And you really get the sense that he's a down to earth guy. And you can see why, he's able to connect with so many of these guys, even though I think he's younger than I am, which was weird to think about. That's the Baltimore Orioles co-hitting coach who's younger than me now. He's 31, 32, no MLB experience, joining this brand new organization, and guys have really taken to him. I think he really called out, like Anthony Santander as a guy who's really learned a lot under him. And it's really good to see. I think it speaks volumes to the kind of coaches, not just at the major league level, but think of all these other guys that we've talked to in the minor league system as well. The guys that the Orioles are bringing in, it's really cool to see play out.
Yeah, we did get a chance to talk to Ryan Fuller when he was still at AA Bowie last year, and you get the sense that their personalities probably work really well together. So, Nick, I would agree with you that it didn't surprise me that he said it's not a competition. There's, not trying to take credit, but it was good to hear him say that. We had that interview earlier today and be part of the main episode, and it's available on YouTube now. So after you finish watching this episode, you can go back and watch the full interview because we've got a lot of big stuff to talk about tonight, and we'll start with the news that dropped Monday morning, which was that Connor Norby, Colton Cowser, and Kobe Mayo are making a jump from High A Aberdeen to AA Bowie. And these are three players that I think at the beginning of the year, if you had said who's likely to make that jump, we would have had them in there. But the timing to some might have been a bit surprising, especially in the case of Norby, who has not been off the IL very long since getting hit in the face couple months ago. So, but still, nonetheless, some interesting promotions here. And I think that in their cases, better performances were taking place than what the base stat line might have indicated at Aberdeen. And turn it over to Nick, because I know that he has some thoughts about that.
And that's it right there. Like, I think it's very important to note with these promotions that when you look at the box scores, if you just pull up whatever you use, MLB.com, Fangraphs, Baseball Reference, whatever, when you pull up those numbers and you're just looking at Colton Cowser's like season line or Kobe Mayo's season line, you aren't getting the full story there. And I think Cowser, Norby, and Mayo, obviously we talked about Cowser a little bit last week, and there have been lots of takes and opinions about Colton Cowser. Norby's really just flown under the radar, I think, completely this year, even though he has, 8 home runs in 40-something games this year. And then Kobe Mayo has, 13 home runs? He had his 13th home run yesterday. He's got the home runs, but, the average, the strikeouts, and none of these are super standout with either of these guys, right? Not in a positive way, at least. But I think all three checked all the boxes that the organization wanted checked in Aberdeen. The data that's not publicly available that we're aware of is impressive. And I think now you get to see Cowser, Norby, and Mayo. This is all three their first professional seasons, because Mayo was 2020 draft pick, so no games for him that season. They're all in their first full pro seasons, and now they're in Double-A. And Kobe Mayo, actually a fellow December baby. So shout out to all the fellow December babies out there. He didn't turn 21 until December 10th. So another 20-year-old in Double-A here. I just think that, the exit velos are fantastic with these guys. We hear that all the time. You see, lost my train of thought there. I'm back. The organization is more worried about process. That's what I'm trying to remember. The organization is more worried about process than results. And clearly they've reached their development milestones in Aberdeen. And, it might get ugly at times, but like I mentioned at the start with that interview with Matt Borg-Schulte, the organization has created a culture where it's okay to fail, and guys are comfortable with that. And they know it's going to happen, but how do they learn from that? How do they grow from that? And so it's important for us as fans not to get stuck on the box scores and stat lines, and really trust what this organization is doing. These are some aggressive promotions, and they wouldn't do it if these guys weren't ready.
Yeah, exactly. And if you're ever watching and be like, why isn't this person get promoted? They're hitting X number and hit this many home runs. And why did this person get promoted? They're only hitting this. It's like the Orioles now are not just looking at the numbers that we can look at. They're looking at the underlying metrics. They're waiting for them to hit certain milestones and benchmarks, and that's what they're going off of, not the just results on the field. They're going off the intangible development that has taken place, and these guys certainly deserve to be promoted. We knew that this was coming, I feel like. I mean, these guys have been performing well, even despite maybe underperforming based on the metrics behind the scenes. But Kobe Mayo, it's so easy to forget. This kid is 20 years old all season long. He's so mature for his age. He just looks confident and comfortable at the plate, the way he plays the field. It's easy to, especially with Gunnar Henderson doing what he's doing, and he's just turning 21 here, I think, this week. It's easy to forget that Kobe Mayo is basically a year younger than him and right on the same path, or even ahead of path of where Gunnar Henderson was this time last year. So that's exciting. Colton Cowser, I feel like he's going to do really well getting out of the Ironbirds home stadium. For whatever reason, it suppresses offense, suppresses power. I think now we'll really see if the swing changes that have hypothetically been made with Colton Cowser have taken effect, and see if his power numbers tick up there in Bowie. And Connor Norby, yeah, he's even under the radar when I was thinking about who to talk about first. He's just goes out there. He's steady. He missed some time, but he's clearly got power. And I think, I don't know, just getting back up there with Cesar Prieto, the gang's going to get back together, and I think we're going to see good things.
Yeah, and it's worth taking a deeper dive into all three players. And I'll start this discussion with Cowser, who I think, Bob, you hit the nail on the head. It's going to be easier to tell in Bowie if the swing changes that we've kind of heard that Cowser has made have an effect on his power, because other than Kobe Mayo and Cesar Prieto when he was there, a lot of hitters don't necessarily hit a lot of home runs at Aberdeen. That was true for Kyle Stowers last year when he was there for part of the season. So that Cowser, leaves Aberdeen with 4 home runs, to me is not terribly surprising and isn't really indicative of where he stands right now from a power perspective. I did want to point this out, which is that the month of June has been really good for Colton Cowser. 286 average and an 856 OPS in 88 plate appearances across 20 games. So it's hard to look at that and not think that he was settling in a bit. And then, like Nick said, some of the things that the Orioles were looking at behind the scenes probably told them that, Cowser was having some bad luck. And that's something that I know has been out there. John Mioli wrote about it in his newsletter a while back about how Cowser had been hitting the ball hard. and just not having a lot of luck. So this is not. I think this is a good time to make the move with Cowser and see what he does against older competition.
Yeah, speaking to the bad luck thing, I was at the game Sunday, and he hit 2 balls to the wall, one in left field, one in right field, that could have easily been gone, maybe, or at least could have been extra base hits in another park, another day with different defensive alignment, what have you. But he stuck with it, and he ultimately did hit his 19th double. He only has 4 home runs, but he's got 19 doubles. That has to be up there as far as organization leaders in doubles. So he's Nick Markakis, seemingly to me, that can play center field. I still think that evaluation holds true so far. And a fresh start, you go up to another level. You're back to square one as far as just your line. You're 0 for 0, and you can kind of take what you've learned and look at it as a kind of a fresh start. And I think for him that could be good.
So Cowser's 19 doubles is actually second to Jordan Westberg, who has 21 doubles. Yeah,
That makes sense.
And Colton Cowser, an underrated part of Colton Cowser's game is the speed. The guy has 16 stolen bases. He's only been caught once. And yeah, maybe you can contribute a little bit of that to Aberdeen because Aberdeen has the turf. So, it plays fast, right? But he still got 16. Only 3 guys in the system, Richie Martin, Dante Williams, and Luis Valdez, have more stolen bases. And Luis Valdez has more stolen bases than almost everybody in minor league baseball with 33 already. But yeah, it's that fact, I'm sure a lot of people say like, well, he's only hitting, 250 something. And I think Norby's in the 240s, Mayo's 250s, 260s, Cowser's like in the 250s. And you say, all right, well, bad luck. Well, that's part of this whole, it's process over results, right? So if they're hitting the ball extremely hard, it's the same argument a lot of people had with Adley Rutschman at the major leagues, right? Rutschman wasn't getting the base hits, but we had the StatCast data there. You could see how hard he was hitting the ball, where he's hitting the ball. You said those hits are going to drop eventually, and they've dropped. They're starting to drop right now for Adley Rutschman at the major league level. And I think that's going to be the same case here. Maybe it could be that fresh start for a lot of these guys, really unlock some things. They're in Bowie. They've got a new challenge in front of them. And I am stoked for Tuesday night to watch these guys in that Bowie because, to be honest, that Bowie lineup was looking like a Norfolk Tides lineup. And so it's good to get some fresh star power on that roster. And I think that's going to be the must-watch game Tuesday night.
Yeah, even when Bowie loses a little bit of luster, you don't have to wait long before the star power arrives back in full force. Now with that rotation with Zach Peak and Drew Rahm, for now at least, they might be AAA bound too. But Noah Denoyer up there as well, and now the lineup is going to be up to par as well.
I think with Mayo, the thing that just stands out to me is that the 3 of us have been, I think, fairly consistent in our assessment of Mayo, although I think as we've gotten to see the kind of player he is, our opinions of him have been raised a little bit. But would you have thought a year ago this time we would be talking about Coby Mayo going to AA at 20 years old?
No. But I mean, that's the case for all of these guys. Like, I didn't think Creed Willems would be in Delmarva right now. I certainly didn't think Mayo would be going to AA right now. I didn't think Gunnar Henderson would be hitting what he's hitting in AAA right now. And that's just another sign that, look, when these guys meet those benchmarks, the Orioles aren't going to keep them around at their level. They're going to move them up as soon as they're ready and give them that new challenge, which is comforting to see, I think. And so, yeah, no, I didn't expect it. And that's not saying that I was down on those guys at all. I just thought Coby Mayo this time last year is a 19-year-old kid who didn't really get to play that much because of 2020. And then he started late last year because of the minor injury. Clearly didn't set him back too much.
Yeah, put it in perspective. This time last year, the FCL was just getting started, and Coby Mayo hadn't made his professional debut yet. Isn't that right?
Yeah, it's about. I think
Sounds
the
right,
FCL.
yeah.
I know the FCL
And now
started
he's
a
in
little later
AA.
last year. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, after we saw what he was capable of at the end of last year, and going into this offseason, yeah, it was definitely in the realm of possibility that we didn't know if he was going to start at Aberdeen or back in Delmarva, but we figured Aberdeen was a good as spot as any, and he's performed as expected, basically. So as can be expected for someone so young at that level. And now we're here. But a year ago this time, no, I didn't even know if he'd make it till Delmarva or Aberdeen by now. But he's killing it, and he deserves where he's at.
Yeah, completely agree. And I'll touch on Norby now, who, as I mentioned earlier, was hit by the face in a hit in the face by a pitch back in May. He was out for about 3 weeks or so before returning in late May. He's been out in the field since. Some of the numbers with Norby don't look great. Right now, 237 average at Aberdeen, 736 OPS, but I don't think that comes anywhere close to telling the full story, because what we're seeing from Norby this year, I think even compared to last year, is he's hitting the ball really hard. And the one thing that we have been talking about for a while with Connor Norby is we know he can hit. We know he can make contact. We know that he knows the strike zone well. It's just a matter of whether or not he's going to tap into that power improvement that he showed at ECU last year before the draft. And I think so far he has done that. His home runs that he hit at Aberdeen this year were not cheap home runs at all. And he leaves high A with 8 homers, which I think for that ballpark is a pretty good accomplishment.
Yeah, to say the least. I mean, you're starting to see the Orioles draft strategy of let's get guys that just hit the ball really hard, and let's see if we can get them to, as we've seen with Westberg in that Mioli piece, pull the ball more, hit it in the air more, and then see what happens. And you see what's happening with Westberg right now. He's apparently leading the organization in doubles with 21, and he's got a bunch of home runs as well. I feel like Connor Norby is kind of a less defensively versatile version of Jordan Westberg at this point. He hits the ball hard. Seems like the same kind of mentality to me. He seems like, he's just a gamer, competitor, just keeps his head down and goes about his business, but seems like he's got some leadership qualities as well. So yeah, I think I like that profile. Let's keep it going in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, and the thing with Norby too, didn't he lead all of college baseball in base hits? I think his last year at ECU when the Orioles drafted him, and the term you kept hearing in every scouting report you saw about Connor Norby, it was always hitterish, how hitterish he is. This guy's a hitter. And so far, I think we have seen flashes of that. I know the average is down this year, but one thing that I'm shocked to see, and I'm not shocked anymore, but the organization's ability to pull more power from these guys has been really cool to see, because I didn't see anywhere in any of these scouting reports before or going into the draft or right after the draft when he became an Oriole. With Westberg, it was if he taps into more power, he could become an everyday second baseman at the major league level. Westberg has certainly tapped into that power.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't see that with Norby, but Norby, like Zach mentioned, when you watch those games in Aberdeen, when he connects on those home runs, those are monster shots. And that's not an exaggeration at all. He knows they're gone right off the bat too, because he's got the stop and stare down. He likes to flex his home runs, which boosts him up in my value there. But that's impressive. So to get more power out of that bat, which I think had a 40 grade power coming out of the draft, is impressive. And I'm just shocked to see, because I actually looked at his splits, his recent splits, and I think he was hitting $149 and striking out almost 50% of the time over the last 2.5 weeks or so in Aberdeen. So I think maybe that shows you really what kind of numbers the Orioles looking at. And I want those numbers so bad, because you look at that and I don't think anyone would say, yeah, he deserves a promotion right now. But again, clearly the Orioles said, nope, you are ready to move up. And this isn't a filler spot. This is because he has nothing left to prove in their eyes at high A, and he's ready for double A. So as president of the Connor Norby fan club, welcome to double A, Connor Norby.
I just thought of something that was great, but I just thought of something as far as development goes. You're seeing, I feel like we've said, Aberdeen pitching staff, amazing, right? They've done great, and they're kind of sticking around Aberdeen, maybe because it is a more pitcher-friendly league ballpark. And the hitters, you're seeing, hey, let's get them out of here and get them to Bowie, where they can kind of see more results based on what we're seeing behind the scenes. Maybe the philosophy is hitters, if they're hitting the benchmarks we need underlying numbers wise, we'll get them up to Bowie. Pitchers, we can wait a little bit longer just because we can continue to work with them and develop them in a more comfortable environment. I don't know, just a thought.
Yeah, and there's Cesar Prieto, I think, is kind of reverse to all of this, but that popped in my mind. But I think there's a question coming up from a listener about Cesar Prieto later on that we can touch into. But other than that, I think that's kind of the flow of what we've been seeing so far with these guys.
I'll say this too before we move on, because we're actually going to be talking about Gunnar Henderson in a moment. This does remind me of when Henderson was promoted from Aberdeen to Bowie last year. It's an extended version of it because they're going to get a lot more time at Double A than Henderson did. He was just up there for a few weeks and then got at bats in the championship series and looked really good there. But you have to think that experience for Henderson last year, getting that taste in Double A, helped his development this year. So if the Orioles feel that that's the case, then these are three players very worthy of that kind of challenge.
Yep, you're starting to see too with, well, no, move on from that because that's going to fall into another question. People ask good questions. We got good questions lined up, and these talking points keep bringing up answers to those questions. So we'll save it for that.
Yeah. Yeah, save it.
We'll focus now on Gunnar Henderson and Jordan Westburg and Terrin Vavra too, because Nick wrote an interesting piece at Baltimore Sports and Life last week talking about these three players. Henderson right now is 18 games into his AAA tenure. He's got an OPS of over 900. Jordan Westburg at 16 games, an OPS of over 1,000 at the AAA level. Terrin Vavra has picked up kind of where he left off at the plate since coming off the IL. So, Nick, I'll turn it over to you. What are you seeing with those three guys right now?
A lot. I will say, I feel like we need to pump the brakes on Gunnar Henderson just a little bit. He has more strikeouts than walks now in AAA. So clearly we have a Gunnar Henderson problem area right now. And I think we might have jumped the gun here. So at best, he's probably Rio Ruiz when he gets to the major leagues. No, did I do a good Orioles Facebook impression there? That's what I was going for with that. No, Henderson, I think he's starting to show that easy opposite field power that was so prominent in Delmarva. The on-base percentage is just absurd. I think he could go 0 for his next 90, striking out all 90 times, and his on-base percentage would still be above league average, and he still wouldn't match, or I think he would at that point match last year's strikeout total. So just insane on-base numbers. The defense, I've mentioned plenty of times before, I love the defensive improvements he's made, and not just the range and the plus arm that he has out there, but the guy's got hops as well, as we saw the other day with that big grab. I think it's very clear that this organization isn't going to call guys up until these top prospects are truly ready and they're up for good, although I think the Kyle Stowers case is kind of unique. I know you could probably point to that and say, hold up, but I think that was a unique situation. But with Henderson, I think it's just make sure let's avoid any extended slumps with him, because he's going to start facing guys multiple times. He's going to start seeing these quad A guys, these experienced guys with MLB experience a second, maybe even a third time, depending on Norfolk's schedule, how it rolls out. I'm sure it got teams like Durham and Charlotte. I'm sure I haven't looked at the schedule, but I'm sure they play them multiple times over these next couple of weeks. But can Henderson adjust to their adjustments and just avoid those extended slumps, which he hasn't really shown at all this year? We're starting to see some of the AAA numbers stabilize a bit, but he's still a well above average player up here. And I think with Jordan Westburg, it's kind of the same thing. At this point, what else does Jordan Westburg really have to show you? I think it's a lot of the same as we know Westburg goes on these extended slumps. We saw that at pretty much every level he's been at. Can he avoid doing that in Norfolk? And he's coming out of the gate so hot. It's just the power for me is truly remarkable. I don't know he's played that many games at Norfolk. I know Norfolk can be a difficult park to hit out of. I feel like most of his damage has come on the road. I'd have to look deeper into that, but I mean, he's got 14 extra base hits in 16 games at the AAA level, which is just insane. Leads all. No one would have guessed that at this point in the season, he would be the minor league leader in home runs with 14. He's got more than Kyle Stowers, Kobe Mayo, and Gunnar Henderson. So yeah, Westburg's having a fantastic season, and I think it'd be cool to see them both promoted on the same day again to the major leagues, like I mentioned in my piece. But I think Westburg is much closer to the majors. I don't think we're too long before we see him in the big leagues. Probably the trade deadline. I imagine there's a lot of movement around the trade deadline, and maybe that opens up a spot for him. Or if you want to put him at third base right now, I mean, in a couple of weeks, he could be up as the everyday third baseman for the Orioles. But Vavra, on the other hand, it's a slower process with him because he's missed so much time with injury. Then he gets hit in the head, and then his next at bat, when he comes back, he gets hit in the elbow. which did not look pretty. And I was like, he's going to miss more time now with an elbow injury, but stayed in that game, stole a base. He's fine. Vavra just works at bats better than I think almost anybody in this system. I think he's one of the smartest hitters in this system. And again, my evaluation hasn't changed though of him. Do I think he's an everyday second baseman at the major league level? Probably not, but I think this is a guy who's going to stick around the major leagues for a very long time as a valuable utility guy. And I don't think he's too far away from the majors either.
Yeah, well said all across the board. Jordan Westberg, you know he's on a heater because he's only walking 4% of the time, only striking out 17% of the time. His ISO is 366, 191 WRC plus. He's just seeing the ball really well right now, and he's not going to take borderline pitches when he knows he can just crush them at this moment. So I'm kind of curious to see what happens once he kind of settles in a little bit. Even, I mean, it's been 16 games, not like it's been just 1 week or anything, but I want to see what he looks like in 3-4 weeks from now, if he's even still in the minor leagues by then, and see if he can keep that strikeout rate down, which would be a career low. He's typically been above 25% everywhere he goes, even with having success, but he also has been walking at least 11% of the time throughout his career. So, you know, that's going to change. Curious to see how that goes. And Gunnar Henderson, I just noticed steamer projections for the rest of the season. At the major league level, he was projected to have a 116 WRC plus, which for a 20-year-old who just got moved up to AAA is pretty remarkable. Jordan Westberg's only at a 102, according to them. So, yeah, these guys are just exciting to watch night in and night out. Gunnar Henderson had that awesome leaping grab at shortstop, too. So, defensively, they're doing it as well. Vavra, I want to see him at the major league level so bad. If he could just stay healthy for a consistent amount of time, I feel like he could get there. He can back up center field. You don't need Ryan McKenna anymore. If he can get to the major league level, he can play second base. You don't need Rougned Odor anymore if he can get to the major league level. And Kyle Stowers has just been so consistent. I don't know if we're talking about him right now, but it just seems natural to throw him into the mix. He's always had even splits between right and left-handed pitching. That has continued month to month. His splits have been pretty consistent in the upper 800s as far as OPS. So the future is knocking on the door, and the trade deadline's like a month away. Could be sooner than we think.
Yeah, I think that the only thing missing with Terran Vavra at this point is just a extended stretch of health at AAA, because he didn't stay. You know, he only got into about 40 to 50 games last year, I think. So he missed a lot of time his injury last year. He's missed some time again this year, but when he has been on the field, he has been so consistent in, as Nick said, just maybe working at bats better than anybody in the organization. So I think that Vavra just needs an extended stretch of time, maybe a few weeks, maybe a month. I don't know what it exactly is, but just an extended stretch of time where he's down there healthy in the lineup every day, and that promotion is going to come. And I think that he's the kind of player that when he comes into the major leagues is going to add something right away, because even if he gets off to a slow start, he's still going to be putting together good at-bats. It's going to look similar to Adley Rutzman, not as much power, but similar in the sense that I don't think his approach is going to change based on the way things are going for him at the plate at any given time. And we actually didn't have Stowers lined up here to discuss, but Bob, I'm glad that you brought him up, because he has been really consistent at AAA this year. And I don't think he really has anything left there to prove, because he hit well there at the end of last year. He's hitting well there again this year. It's just a matter of trying to find him regular at-bats, which you can't do in the major leagues right now. If you call Kyle Stowers right now without moving somebody else, you wouldn't be able to get him regular at-bats. So that's going to probably have to be what happens to get Stowers in the major leagues for good. Is someone, don't want to say somebody gets hurt, but someone gets traded, or you do have an injury and the player is going to be out for a little while. That's probably when you see Stowers.
Yeah. That's the whole episode in of itself, I think, talking about how we get him on the major league roster, which is certainly an interesting conversation that we are going to have soon with the trade deadline approaching. It's crazy to believe, like, the minor league season is half over. Even the major league season is essentially half over at this point. It's mind-blowing. But, I mean, you look at Stowers' numbers in AAA, he's cut that strikeout rate down like 7-8% from last year, from his AA numbers. which is phenomenal because we see that swing. And even Matt Borg-Schulte made the comment, like, the guy's got a swing on him, right? And the strikeouts have come down significantly this year. The walk rate has remained the same. He's hitting for average. He's continuing to get on base at a high clip. The WRC plus is 131 right now in AAA. Yeah, I want to see what this guy can do in the major leagues on a regular basis. And so it's, like I said, the interesting part is how do we get him on this major league roster playing every single day? Because, right now, you're not going to move Mullins, you're not going to move Hayes, and Santander is playing well. So where is he going to fit at? You can't put him at DH either with Mancini and Mountcastle and Rutschman, obviously, but it's going to be interesting to see how this major league roster shakes out over the next couple of weeks. That's for sure.
Yeah, one way or the other, you got to find some room for Stowers. He's pretty much ready, even if it's just Mancini that gets traded, and you can rotate him and Santander between right field and DH. That's better than nothing. But I think you'd like to see at least one of these outfielders traded as well, if you can get a good return, because like we were talking about before the show, Vavra's been playing a lot of center field. You want to use his versatility the way they're kind of designing him to be used in the minor leagues. And you want to see Stowers every day. Plus, Yusniel Diaz is coming back, hopefully, for longer than a week. And Elias talks about him wanting to get him some major league time in the second half of the season. So, yeah, it's going to be an interesting month here. We saw a trade today, Carlos Santana going from the Royals to the Mariners. So, looks like trade season has officially begun, and we'll see how it goes.
I mean, it's shocker that Jerry Dipoto kicks this thing off as early as he does. My only other thought with Kyle Stowers, though, is like just thinking about this, because I made the comment of why did Stowers get sent to the Arizona Fall League? And I remember saying it's probably to showcase him a little bit. But unfortunately, he got hurt because he played across 3 levels last year. And so I was wondering, why does this guy need more at-bats? Because he's not going to be on the opening day roster. Right? I just thought that was a weird situation there. But like now at this point, could you see Mike Lash trading one of these guys like Kyle Stowers, for instance? Or we're going to move with Santander, Mancini. There are other moves on the major league roster we think that are going to take place first. And Stowers is going to get his chance in Baltimore first and foremost.
Personally, I think it's the latter, just because my thought with him going to the Fall League was, let's get him used to playing a full season's worth of baseball. Get him that extra month, but obviously didn't work out that way, with the idea that he was going to play well into September in 2022. Yeah, I think they're higher on Stowers than the rest of the league, personally, just because that strikeout rate probably alarms some teams if they're just looking at his numbers. But look, they've already cut that, and the consistency is there, the power is there. I think they want to hold on to him. I know we're going to get to that point, right, where we either have to, unfortunately, or need to, or want to use them as far as getting like a top line starting pitcher or a star player. But I just don't think we're quite there yet.
Yeah, I agree with Bob, and I would add on to that too, that I think at this point the Orioles probably are going to look at how long do we have this player under control. And if you're looking, I think Santander has 2 years of team control remaining after this year. Mancini has a mutual option, which is all but certain to be declined by one side or the other after this season. So he'll become a free agent. Whereas Stowers, you'll have 6 years. So that's going to, trying to take that competitive window and extend it a little bit is going to depend in part on having players that are young and cost controlled for a few years, or in the case where, possibly with Adley Rutschman, if you do see an extension at some point, you've got that number locked down for the next 8-10 years. You know what you're going to be paying him. And now if you want to go out and you want to sign a big free agent, or maybe there's a starting pitcher out there that's got a couple of years of team control left, and you think you can get him to sign an extension after a deal, you do that. And one of the ways you probably do that is, trade Anthony Santander and bring up Kyle Stowers, or trade Trey Mancini and bring up Kyle Stowers, because you know that Mancini's probably not going to be in Baltimore next year.
Yeah, it's going to be next couple of weeks are going to be really interesting to see how this roster shakes out, but at the same time, preparing for a lot. I think all Orioles fans are preparing for a lot emotionally right now, and to be fair, when it comes to Trey Mancini, we're going off the rails there with that talk, but I'll just say I'm preparing for a lot, and I think it's okay. Whatever your feelings are about this, I think they're okay and they're validated right now.
Yeah, I think last trade deadline, we were pretty much prepared for nothing to happen. I kind of feel the opposite this year. I kind of feel like a lot is going to happen and people are not going to be happy with it just because the Orioles are playing so well. But I think the way the system is getting top heavy, it's not going to be sure, established veterans are going to be hard to replace even with the most talented prospects. But I think it's going to be stuff. What am I thinking? It's going to not be quite as bad just because the guys that will have ready to replace the people that theoretically get traded will at least be able to hold their own or at least gain experience for the future when we're really going to need them.
Yeah, we'll be keeping an eye on that in a few weeks. Before we move on entirely from Norfolk, I do want to talk about DL Hall a little bit. It feels like stuff-wise, Hall is ready, even though his last couple of starts have not been his best outings. He had a rough outing against Lehigh Valley on Sunday. His outing earlier in the week against Lehigh Valley was a little bit better, but still walked 5 batters while striking out 3 and 4 in the third innings pitched. I guess where I'm kind of leading this discussion is that we know we're probably going to see DL Hall in the majors this year as long as he stays healthy and he can take the mound when he needs to take the mound. But what does he need to do at AAA to convince you that he's ready, or do you already feel like he's ready and these, uneven results from time to time don't really persuade you?
Personally, I'm in the same boat as I was even before back-to-back rougher outings. The stuff is just so damn good, and I feel like he's the type of guy. I've been saying this, like he's the type of guy that I feel like once he gets the call, he's going to step up his game for that moment. Just I love the bulldog mentality that he has, the confidence that he has, and the stuff is so good. If just try to throw it over the middle of the plate, he's going to strike out big league hitters. That's how good his stuff is. Yeah, it might delay just because they want him to probably come off a stretch of 1 or 2 good starts in a row before they call him up to the major leagues. But it hasn't changed my opinion whatsoever.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just kind of conflicted at this point. I don't know really which way I'm leaning. Like I see and hear a lot of the concerns about Hall, the high pitch counts and not being able to get into the 5th, certainly not the 6th inning of these AAA starts. The walks being a sort of an issue here that, you'd like to see a few number of fewer walks here with him. But at the same time, like Bob said, the stuff is just that good. And my thing was the secondaries, especially when he was in Bowie, they just looked so much more effective. And I can hear like Matt Sabato's voice of the base in my head. That one start where it was like strike 3, change up, strike 3, change up, strike 3, change up, strike 3, just over and over and over again. And there were a couple of starts there where the changeup was just his finishing pitch, or being able to drop a curveball in or a slider in to open up a count, pitch backwards, and then finish guys off with 99 mile per hour heat up in the zone, right? And I feel like with Hall's starts, like because of the lack of control, we're not really seeing those effective secondaries over and over again. It's been more fastball heavy almost. And again, I don't have a tracker here. I can't tell like what he's been throwing. I don't have that StatCast data, but I just get the sense visually from the starts that I'm watching that it tends to be more fastball heavy. And he's having trouble locating that fastball right now. That's for sure. But at the same time, like I like Bob's point there of his personality and his attitude. I do feel like if he's in the majors, he is going to take it up, not just 1 notch. He's going to take it up 10 notches in the major leagues. And maybe that's going to be too much for him because we've also seen that it can be kind of easy to get to DL Hall. When he's having a rough day, the pitch clock gets into his head, I think, sometimes in the minor leagues. The umpiring strike zones, when the broadcast teams are calling out the strike zone, like that's not anybody making an excuse for DL Hall anymore. That's a bad strike zone that the ump is calling that day. They have the accurate maps there that they're looking at, not the MILB.com ones. And the last couple starts especially, he has been getting squeezed. And when that happens, you clearly see their frustrations are very visible. He wears his emotions on his sleeve, both good and bad with Hall. But yeah, so I'm just not sure. Like, do you bring him up and say, the stuff is so good, let's figure it out? And maybe at the same time, we're not trying to get you to go 6 innings a start, because I'm sure there's a hard cap with his innings after last season. So can you go out there and give us 4 innings every 5 days until you reach your cap in the major league level. I don't know which way I land anymore. I tend to say let's just bring him up in a couple of weeks and go with it. But at the same time, like I fully understand why they want to keep him in AAA until at least August.
Yeah, and you don't know how much the AAA / Major League Ball is taken into effect with his command, feel for secondaries, like you said. If he's working on, the command of the secondaries with the different ball behind the scenes, and during his starts right now, he's going more fastball heavy. I mean, we don't know these things. Justin Ramsey, hit us up if you got the answers, but yeah. I don't know. Blake Snell has always been the comparison, right? He's going to be a 5-and-dive elite pitcher, and it's looking more and more like the case. But at least for now, that's fine. You can. He's still very young. You can always just work on that as you get to the major leagues. There's only so much a guy with that good of stuff can work on at the minor league level, just because hitters don't have a chance. They don't have a chance to hit him at that level.
Yeah, I think I understand where Nick is, because I'm there in some ways with him, where I think my issue sometimes is I wish that his starts were going a little bit more efficiently. He did get to 92 pitches 2 outings ago, he got to 92 pitches. But, he's starting to get consistently into the 80s with his pitch counts, but he's only gone through the 5th inning once at Norfolk. So part of me does wish that he would be a little bit more efficient, but then at the same time, they're not building him up, I think, the way that they were trying to build up Grayson Rodriguez and Kyle Braddis. Those are 2 guys that have the profile of being able to go deep into games, or whatever definition of deep into games is in today's baseball. DL Hall is probably not that kind of pitcher. So I don't know how much the innings should be a concern. But like Nick said, there probably is a hard cap. So if you bring him up to the major leagues, it's a question of, do you want him to get through 5 every time out if he can? Or is it go out, give us 4 shutdown innings? We've shown that we can make this piggyback thing work this year, and we'll look to stretch you out next year. Just go in and get used to major league hitters.
Yeah. And my thing with DL Hall is, regardless of the results right now, clearly in many areas he has taken a step forward this year. And to see him pitch as well as he did right out of the gates after not pitching for almost a full year was phenomenal. I think that speaks to his ability. And I also wonder, thinking about bring him up in a couple of weeks or bring him up later in the season, how many pitchers at the major league level are just blowing expectations out of the water? And you look at the production that the major league staff is getting out of their pitchers. I almost wonder, better coaching up there against better hitters with his mentality, could that major league staff get more out of him like they are with so many of these other guys? I almost wonder if that's the case as well. I don't know.
Definitely something to think about. And we'll turn our attention now to some listener questions that we got. And some of them came from our Patreon chat. Some of them came from Twitter. And we'll start with @bgreen484, who has this question. This is a point that was made today. I know Nathan Ruiz brought it up, that 9 of the 10 top prospects are now at the AA level or higher in the Orioles system with today's promotions. So the question here is, are there any negatives to 9 of the top 10 prospects being in AA or higher? The draft next month will replenish some of the rosters for Delmarva and Aberdeen, but wasn't sure if this was typical or not. Obviously, plenty of positives about it, and it seems like 2024 could be a fun year. And I'll let Bob start in this one.
In short, is there anything wrong with that? No, because if you look at the Cubs' top 30 prospect rankings, most of their guys are in the lower minors. I think if you ask a team, do you want most of your best prospects to be succeeding in the upper minors or the lower minors? Upper minors is because they're close to the majors. They're closer to fulfilling their potential. And like you said, we have the first pick in the draft. We have a bunch of good draft picks coming up that will easily replenish the ceiling, the upside. And I think it's also good. These guys aren't graduating yet. Some of them will, some of them won't. But there's also so much depth in the system. Give guys like John Rhodes and Zach Peak and et cetera, a chance to get to that top 10, top 15 range. And I don't know. I just can't think it's a bad thing that you're going to graduate a bunch of prospects or they're on the verge of coming off your list. I think that's a good thing more than a bad thing.
Did some bell sound off because you just said the name of the show in your answer?
Oh, geez, I didn't even realize.
I always feel weird, and I always like stop myself beforehand. I'm like, I don't even think of some other way to phrase this. But no, I don't know if it's typical or not. But with other organizations. But I was actually going to make this note when talking about Henderson and Westberg and these promotions to Bowie we just saw today. Like you're seeing those constant waves of talent, of real talent, now being formed, and they are starting to move closer and closer to the shores of the major league. Right, that analogy there, but. And there's still some really good talent down in Aberdeen. Bob mentioned John Rhodes. Dante Williams, I think, is a really interesting. You have someone like T.T. Bowens, I think, is an interesting bat. The pitchers, especially in Aberdeen. There are a lot of guys there as well. And Delmarva, I don't really see a whole lot in Delmarva that's ready for Aberdeen. Heston Kjerstad, obviously, is one. Anthony Servideo, once he gets some more regular playing time under him, I'd say he can move up as well. I don't really see much talent in Delmarva that's ready for Aberdeen. I'm not saying there's no talent in Delmarva. There's plenty of it. There's just 18, 19-year-old kids down there getting their first taste. So, yeah, those rosters will be replenished with these draft picks and such. But, I mean, you've got some big talents in the FCL, like Michael Hernandez and Samuel Basayo are down there. And I know Hernandez is heating up. Basayo has been putting bat to ball really well. You look at his numbers in the FCL, he's playing well so far. And it's only been, 3 weeks or so in the Dominican Summer League, but all these top guys that they gave top dollar to are off to really impressive starts in the Dominican Summer League. And we're going to have another international draft class right behind them with bigger signings. I think having so many of the organization's top prospects in Bowie and Norfolk it's a really good thing. It means all those guys that we were talking about when this show first started back in 2020, when they were in, we're talking about Gunnar Henderson and Delmarva, and people say, well, that's cool. That's cute. He's doing well in Delmarva, but what can he do when he gets to the major leagues? You're getting a real taste of that in AAA right now. I think if anything, it just means that for people who want a big time major league product and people who want Mike Elias to start spending some money on the major league roster, I think this is telling you that time is coming now, this offseason.
Also, the point of it, it's cool to have number one farm system. It's cool to have such a deep, awesome farm team. But the point of this is to have a awesome major league team and have success at the major league level. And we're right on the. I almost did it again. we're right there of having that happen. And this is the elite talent pipeline. This is not our one shot. This is going to be a continuous flow. Hopefully, that's the plan of talent. So yeah, that's where I'm at with it.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't see anything wrong with 9 to 10 being there. Part of it is just the way the organization stacks up right now with how that top 10 comes together. I mean, most of those guys were, I think pretty much everyone was high A and above to start the season. So it's natural that at this point you would be there where it's double A and above. But it speaks to the fact that the players who we expect to make an impact in the major leagues within the next year or two are knocking on the door right now. And that constitutes the top part of your farm system, which is never bad in any circumstance. But then you add in the talent, not just, in the lower levels of the system, but the talent when you get into the, 10 through 20, 20 through 30 range on most Orioles prospect lists right now. And I know ours is going to be really reflective of that when we make the main update on BaltimoreSportsAndLife.com, probably in the next month or so. That there's a lot of good players beyond the top 10. So I think it's a good position for the organization to be in. And this will go on a different note here. And this is from at Ben Potros on Twitter. Should the Orioles sign a big-time position player this or next offseason? And if so, which promising minor league player are you comfortable with blocking their call-up? And I'll start with Nick.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of where I ended my last answer. Spend the money now. You can sign that star this offseason, and I don't think he's going to block anybody because if you sign that star shortstop, and I'm completely fine, bring in that stud third baseman or that stud shortstop this offseason. Open up the checkbook and give him the money. And if it's a shortstop, you can move Gunnar Henderson to third base and you can put Westberg at second base. They are versatile, and if you move them around the infield, they don't lose value by moving them off shortstop, I don't think. And same case, if you sign the stud third baseman, and I don't have the list of potential free agents in front of me, so I don't really know who I'm targeting here, but if it's a third baseman, star veteran third baseman, then same thing. Leave Gunnar at short and move Westberg over to second, or vice versa. We don't know how the organization grades defense, but yeah, I would love to see them nail down that star bat, like that bona fide veteran bat, that Carlos Correa type bat that everybody wanted last offseason. Could it be Correa this offseason? Maybe. I don't know. But someone like that, and then you fill the pieces around him. You've got Rutschman, you've got Mountcastle, you've got Hayes really emerging this year. You've got the good young valuable pieces. Bring in your stud or two, and then fill in the rest of the pieces around him. And if anyone does happen to be blocked, well, you trade them for starting pitching. Let's use those assets down the minor leagues.
Yeah, I don't like the phrase "who are you comfortable blocking?" because like if these prospects pan out and the Orioles like them enough that, hey, this is who we want to keep as part of our core, like Kobe Mayo, just hypothetically in a year or two, you sign Carlos Correa, you got to do it. If you can do it, you got to do it. He's a great player right now. And like you said, you can move Gunnar Henderson around. You can move Jordan Westberg to second base, or you could trade Jordan Westberg. You could, put Kobe Mayo at right field with that arm. He's going to make Austin Hayes look like Cedric Mullins out there as far as arm strength goes. Like you find a way. If you have talented players, you will find a way to get them in the lineup on the field every day to help your team. And I just can never see not wanting to spend the money, like you said, and get an established, for sure. Well, nothing's for certain in baseball, but at least a veteran presence who has a history of continued success at the plate or on the mound. I can never, we want to win World Series. You're going to have, sorry, Eric. I want to keep Kobe on this team, even if it's in right field, but no, right now I'd keep it third. But yeah, you want talented players. And if there's some available to you for the only price is money, then you got to do it. And these prospects were high on them. And I think a bunch of them will pan out and be huge parts of that. But I don't think you're blocking anyone. If they're good enough, they'll make it. They'll help you in one way or another.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm looking at the free agent list for next year. And, Xander Bogaerts is available. Carlos Correa is available. But guys, hear me out. Michael Franco is available. You can bring him back, put him at third base, 2023 playoffs booked.
I mean, look what they've done with these pitchers. I mean, let's start doing it with the hitters. It just took some time for Chris Holt and staff to settle in at the major league level. We got Matt Borg-Schulte and Ryan Fuller. They're settled in. Yeah, bring Michael Franco back, and there we go. Turn him around, all-star.
So got a question here from @the Mad Behemoth. Some prospects, not top prospects, but prospects nonetheless, are getting squeezed for playing time. Adam Hall and Greg Cullen, for example, are at least being pushed out of their natural positions. What will happen to them? And are there others you'd want to highlight? That's a good question. I'll start with Bob on that.
Yeah, again, this is, I think, problems that a deep, great farm system are going to have. Like you have too many good players for only so many positions and trying to balance them being at the right level for their development versus getting everyday at bats. And I think you'll see like these string of promotions with Norby and Mayo being promoted to Bowie, that you'll start to see like Daryl Hernandez get more everyday at bats in Aberdeen. Yeah, I don't know. As far as in particular Hall and Cullen, I'm not sure how high the organization is on Cullen necessarily, that they're going to want to get him at a certain position and a certain amount of at-bats. But a guy like Adam Hall, we know they're at least decently high on him, at least his upside. And he's been performing much better this year. I don't know if maybe he's still stealing bases. He's still hitting and running. I don't know why he hasn't been in the field so much lately, but I'm sure they have their reasons. He can play second base a little bit, outfield a little bit. He's kind of like Taron Vavra, super light, right-handed version. I'm trying to think while I'm pontificating. I'm trying to look up for any other guys that could be in a similar boat and not necessarily finding any, but it'll be interesting to see how Hudson Haskin gets used in the outfield now that Kowser's up. Who's going to get most of the starts in center field between the two of those? And Zach Watson. So he kind of got like three center fielders there in that outfield. That should be good for the pitching staff. I'll concede my time.
As I didn't think about the center field aspect. I was just so excited about that infield in Bowie again that Yeah, didn't Zach Watson like rob 2 home runs yesterday? So at least one and another 2 fantastic plays at the fence yesterday. And so yeah, it will be interesting. And Hudson Haskins just having his bat in the lineup. But yeah, I just think like this is just kind of part of new baseball now, right? Like guys have to be versatile. And for guys like Adam Hall and Terran Vavra, like it increases their resume a little bit, I think. And at the end of the day, like if someone's getting squeezed for playing time, then it's a clear sign that they're not a major focus of the future. If they're bouncing around like your Greg Cullens and AJ Graffaninos, that makes it difficult to see a future for them. But yeah, the Adam Hall thing is kind of weird. If he is DHing that much and he's not playing at second base all the time, or even in center field, is there an injury? Like, what exactly is going on with Adam Hall? Are the Orioles not that high on Hall? Although it seemed like when we talked to Tim DeJean that the Orioles seem to be pretty impressed with his defensive abilities, especially in center field. But at the same time, I've been waiting for Adam Hall. I feel like we've been giving him this Hall pass in his delaying because of his amateur career and not playing at some of the best competition when he was an amateur. But the guy's 23 years old now, so I mean, you got to hit, or that's going to be the end of the road for you. So
yeah.
Yeah, it's an interesting question because you have guys like Colin and AJ Graffinino, who we were excited when the Orioles picked them up for Tommy Malone a few years ago. And in fact, I think we might have briefly had Graffinino in our top 30. I can't remember for sure, but I think he was around the top 30 when he came in. But yeah, players are going to get squeezed. They're going to have to, find at bats in some way because these spots in the organization, up the middle, second base, shortstop, center field, are loaded right now. And you're seeing that it's not stopping the top prospects from moving up. No one was looking at Bowie and thinking, well, Cesar Prieto's there, that blocks Connor Norby. That's not how the Orioles are handling it. So versatility really is going to be key for those guys. And I think especially for someone like Adam Hall, because he's got just enough tools to make you think he could possibly be a big leaguer, but is it necessarily going to be at one position? He can put that speed to use and develop in the outfield. So hopefully he gets more time in the field here over the next couple of months to show that.
Talking about position changes and guys, that makes me think of Norfolk. Why is Caden Grenier playing first base for the Norfolk Tides? Because he ran into Terran Vavra. I think this was just in Sunday's game. He ran into Terran Vavra. I think he ran into DL Hall or almost bowled him over. And DL Hall was making the plays himself out there on the mound defensively. A couple of passed balls over at first base. I don't understand why they're like Preston Palmeroing him and moving him over to first base. And you get rid of Patrick Dorian, which I know Dorian wasn't a prospect in that sense. And he had a fantastic year in AA, really struggled in AAA, which was unfortunate to see. The organization seemed pretty high on Dorian, bringing him into these offseason camps with guys like Robert Newstrom and stuff. But, why let Dorian go only to have someone like Grenier play first base? I didn't get it. But at least kudos to the Orioles. They did at least trade him. And instead of just outright cutting him, I thought that was a little bit better. But yeah, a lot of names being thrown around there, like Jacob. I think there's a lot of injuries to catchers with Norfolk's roster as well, but it's not a big deal. It just came in my mind. It's just annoying when you're watching DL Hall try to settle in and you're seeing Caden Grenier botch literally everything out there in the field. But
hey, some people say his defense at shortstop is a little overrated. Maybe this goes into that, or maybe it's just because Gunnar Henderson and Jordan Westbrook are on a team and he's not going to find much playing time other than that.
Just bring up Dashbach. Put him at first base, please, in AAA.
The other question is in a kind of off the board completely for us. If you could have one other, this is from at Ty Ranica. If you could have one other prospect from any other team, who would it be and why? Additionally, what does that say about the state of our system and the route we decide to go in the 2022 draft? So I'll start with Nick here.
Yeah, this is actually a really old question, but when we took listener questions, I remembered Ty's question from a long time ago, and I just threw it in there for fun. It is kind of interesting. Any other prospects? I'm a big Corbin Carroll guy. I don't care how deep our outfield is, but my answer is going to be Daniel Espino from Cleveland. Maybe a little risky, but I want the guy who throws 100 miles an hour and striking out like 2 guys per inning, I think was his average in Double-A. I know he's hurt right now, but I think he's coming back soon. But I'll take that risk. I want one of those guys in our system. And if he were to join, we know it's not going to happen. This is just for fun. But what would that say about the 2020 draft, the route the Orioles take? Absolutely nothing. You still take whoever you want, and that's regardless. I said last week during our mock draft, if the Orioles weren't picking 1-1, but still were in the top 10, Kevin Parada would be much higher up my list. Catcher Kevin Parada would be much higher up my list, even if the organization thought he could stick at catcher, even with Adley Rutschman in the organization. I don't care about position when we're talking about the draft.
Yeah, this is a tough question for sure. Corbin Carroll is the easy answer, of course. I feel like he's going to be right up there with Gunnar Henderson as far as top prospects in baseball by the time next year rolls around. But I'm going to go with Jackson Chourio of the Milwaukee Brewers, who is 18 years old. He won't turn 19 until next March. He is in low A, and he has a 167 WRC plus. He has a 986 OPS, 8 home runs, 15 doubles, 4 triples, 6 stolen bases. He's only striking out 28% of the time for a kid that young at that level. Seems pretty impressive to me. He's walking around league average. Like, that's what I'm waiting for with the Orioles as far as the international talent coming in. Like, one of these guys to take off like a Julio Rodriguez. And I think Jackson Chourio could be that level of talent. So I would take him.
I'm not doing this to feed into the whole cupboard is bare narrative, but I think I would take Shane Baz right now. Stuff looks good at the major league level. I think he's settling in, and he's got an impressive fastball. I had the fortune to see him when Tampa Bay was just in town recently, and he looked really good on the mound. And you basically would be adding him into a system where there is already power arms at the top of the organization, so I don't think that's a weakness for the Orioles. But I would love to be able to pencil Baz into the rotation for the rest of this year and for the next several years. Would that affect anything for me for the 2022 draft? No, because the 2022 draft doesn't really have a lot of pitchers at the top of the class, but it's deep when you get beyond, the first round or so. So it wouldn't affect anything for the draft. And it honestly doesn't really speak to something I think is a weakness in the farm system. I just think Shane Baz is going to be a good pitcher, and I'd like to have him.
I like that home run he gave up to Kyle Stowers last year. And you mentioned the name. I still remember that. He knew right off the bat. He let everybody know how mad he was about that. That was one of the best home runs of last year.
Speaking of Shane Baz, if Shane McClanahan's still qualified, I would take him too. The Rays know how to develop pitchers.
Shout out to Shane McClanahan. He makes me a lot of money in fantasy betting, so I'll take Shane as well.
So this is a couple of questions from David in our Patreon chat, and I'll start with this one. You guys have Connor Norby, Taron Vavra, and Cesar Prieto ranked 11th, 12th, and 14th, respectively. Can you talk about the difference between them, ceilings and floor for each? So I picked this question out because this was something we actually talked about a lot coming into this season. And I think where we kind of had our consensus as a group was that Norby had the highest ceiling, with Vavra as the highest floor, but we thought it was possible that Prieto could beat both of them to the major, or not necessarily Vavra, but could get to the major leagues quickly and have a long career there in some sort of role. But we didn't have much to go on Prieto at that point. What I want to know here is, has anything in the last few months made either one of you think about this differently, or do you feel the same way?
I don't feel worse about any of them, which is a good thing. I feel the same or better about each. I still think Vavra probably has the highest floor. Probably say Norby still has the highest ceiling, but Prieto is still the wild card to me. Like, what do you guys think of his performance in Double-A so far? He's been hitting for average for the most part. He had an offer in the last game or two to kind of bring things back down, but isn't showing that power, which is weird because he showed more power in Aberdeen than in Bowie, and not really walking so much. I still think he's just going to be a high average guy that can hit for doubles and maybe 15 home runs a year in a full season when all is said and done. But I'm glad to have all three in our system. I guess I'll keep everything the same on my end for now.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that because the rank, I can remember how I answered this before the season started. And I'm kind of in that same boat. Even look at it now. We had never watched Prieto play before. Now we have half a season worth, but it is interesting because he had those, 7 home runs in Aberdeen. He's got just 1 in Bowie. So that's what I was touching on earlier. It's weird that he's kind of gone reverse of what we normally see. Guys struggle to get the home runs in Aberdeen. They get to Bowie, and they really take off. Well, it's been the opposite for Prieto. I mean, he's still swinging at everything in a good way, not in a bad way like high strikeout rates, but he's still swinging, making good contact. These hits just aren't falling for him. But I still agree. I do think Vavra has the highest floor. And again, he's going to be a major league utility guy for a long, long time. My only concern with Vavra is that extensive injury history. It's long, and it goes back to well before he's with the Orioles. It's nothing new with him, so I am concerned there. Norby, the power is super impressive. We already talked about that. So he doesn't have the positional versatility, though. I don't really think he's played. I didn't look this up where else he's played this year, but I feel like it's been predominantly second base DH. But Prieto has played second, short, and third, and actually the last couple of nights has played a really, really good third base. I think Bob actually made the comment after going to one of your first games in Aberdeen. You mentioned like the arm strength didn't really seem to be there, and it looked good over there at third base the other night. Can it be consistent? I don't know. Maybe that's improved with him. It'd be great if that's the case. But yeah, the power is interesting, but the hit tool is very impressive, and he's been playing a good infield all the way around the diamond. So I do like that. He's kind of a real wild card among those three still.
Yeah, I don't think that anything's really changed for me, although I think we're getting a better sense of what kind of player Prieto is, and I could see a little bit more power there than we expected, because the one thing we were hearing pretty consistently was that there's not much power there. He's a contact hitter. Still high on Norby, like Bob said. Nobody's like, my opinion on any of these players has not gotten worse. In fact, it's gotten slightly better. So I would say that the highest ceiling is still Norby, with Vavra the highest floor, and Prieto is something that's a wild card. And we'll go to this next question from David. Which players in your top 50 so far this season have been the biggest surprises, and which have been the biggest disappointments / worries? We're actually going to expand on this in our show next week when we kind of do a mid-season roundup. But either one of you want to have a preliminary discussion on this now?
Let me do some research and I'll get back to you. Give me 3 seconds.
I looked at our original top 50 for the first time today in a while, and it's interesting, to say the least. Like, as far as surprises go, a few guys I had questions about. They're showing me exactly kind of what I feared would happen with them, unfortunately. And I think there are a few guys who are a little bit showing more consistency and more in some areas than I thought they would, which is a good sign. But as far as like just overall surprises, maybe this is a cop-out answer, but I'm going to go with it. I just think it's Gunnar Henderson. We all knew he was going to be good, but I just didn't think, no one thought he would be this good this early. And I just don't really see anyone on our list when thinking about my personal expectations, which I know differ from a lot of other people, but from my personal expectations, I don't really see anyone on our list that's kind of blowing me away as far as better surprises. Disappointments, there are a few of those that I think we can get into a lot of those if we really wanted to, unfortunately, but I'm going to go with Garrett Stallings. I hate reading these numbers on air, but we got to do it. I was probably higher on Stallings than most people. I will admit that. And I thought he was going to take a solid jump forward this year, especially after watching his first couple starts of the year. But just in the month of June, he's made 5 starts. He has an ERA of 28.50, a 4.17 whip, and a 5.36 average against in 5 starts that went just 12 innings. Like, those are astronomical numbers that I don't know how that's possible.
Yeah, that's pretty rough. And I've been a Stallings defender for quite a while.
Yeah.
Running out of excuses. No, I mean, I don't know. Something's going on there because he's not walking anyone and he's striking out guys still. So it's extremely strange to me. Other than him, I'd say, I mean, Joey Ortiz for me a little bit. Obviously, you know, he's not putting up the offensive numbers. At least he'll have some good games, and then he'll take a couple offers and kind of stay around the same, like low 200s batting average, low 600 OPS. But the defense is so good, and the numbers doesn't even matter. For surprise, I say guys like Adam Hall and Yusniel Diaz when he's healthy. They've kind of bounced back in a pretty good way. Yeah, I really don't think overall this year there's been that many disappointments outside of just untimed injuries, ill-timed injuries. Zach Watson, he had a good week actually this past week, but I mean he's been pretty rough this year so far. So yeah, we'll go into it. We're gonna have a top 50 update as well next week, mid-season top 50 update with Kyle Bradish off of the list and Tyler Nevin. Should be interesting shakeup. And I know I made one big change personally, so become a patron if you want to listen to that.
Yeah, I would say that I kind of took a little bit of a different approach just for the sake of this episode, although I'll probably take a deeper dive next week. And I kind of looked at what aspect of a player's performance surprised me. I'd say it's Hudson Haskins' power. We had heard murmurs that he could hit, that he had some raw power, and there were questions about whether he would tap into it. Last year, we really didn't see it before he got hurt. And I don't know if we would have had he been able to finish out the season. I think he got hurt in about mid-July last year. But this year, it's been there. 8 homers already. So already surpassed his total from last season, even though he's played in 28 fewer games than he did last year. So Hudson Haskins' power has been a little bit of a surprise. I think as far as the disappointment goes, it would be easy, but Zach Lothar and Kevin Smith, I think both had opportunities this year and really struggled, especially Lothar. And I looked at our list and I was surprised that we had him as high as we did back before the season at 24th. And we were defenders of him last year because we thought the Orioles mishandled him, but he really struggled. He has really struggled at Norfolk this year, and now is on the development list, I believe. Correct?
Yeah, not even on Norfolk's roster. But yeah, that's a tough one. Kevin Smith would have been my biggest disappointment, but I called that a long time ago. I saw a couple of names in the chat there that I really like too. Ryan Watson, Noah Denoria, Maverick Canley. Those are all huge surprises, and those are all 3 guys performing extremely well this year. They weren't even in our top 50 to begin the year. So I think that's where you're seeing a lot of good depth pieces come up through this system and how deep this system is, because you've seen guys emerge really kind of out of nowhere. Ryan Watson was a relief guy, strictly a relief guy, and now he's had a really productive year as a starter in Bowie. So I think that's really good sign for this system, and hopefully a sign that those 3 guys end up in our top 50 when we update it for non-patrons. That is.
So we'll wrap up with this question from Matt. I heard this on a podcast recently that AA has pitchers with better stuff, while AAA generally has pitchers with more experience, but they aren't as good. Is that a fair assessment?
In a roundabout way. I think we talked about this a little bit before the show started. And, AA, you have a bunch of up and coming young guys with great stuff that haven't really refined the approach, the pitch selection, the sequencing, the command. And AAA, yeah, they might not, the raw stuff might be, pitcher for pitcher, not quite as good, but they're usually older guys that have maybe some major league experience. They know how to pitch, they know how to hit the corners. So it's really just about refinement, and maybe if you can hit AA pitching like Gunnar Harrison showed, then AAA is a big test, because you're going to have to be a little bit more perfect to execute the way you were a level below, and he's showing that he's done that. But I think that's pretty much what I would say about that.
Yeah, I think that's fair. It's just a matter of the AAA guys. A lot of those AAA guys, it's a lot of guys like Spencer Watkins. And stuff. Teams have a lot of those guys on their AAA rotation, and Watkins has shown he's had really good starts at the major league level. And maybe they don't have the best stuff, but they can expose your weaknesses a lot better. I think they study you more. They know how to get guys like you out at a higher rate than these AA guys who are just relying on more so on their pure stuff. So I mean, we don't really have full scientific answers there, not being scouts or anything, but I think. Yeah, generally, that is the case.
Yeah, I agree with both of you. And we'll move in now to our final segment of the episode, where we will shout out players outside of our top 30. And we went way beyond the top 30 with our players in this episode. Shouting out guys that have done something good recently, whether it's been a good game or a good week, or it could just be something that we have in the stat line. But, hold on. Before I get ahead of myself here, we got a couple of questions from the live audience that we're going to pull up.
I've been saving a couple just as we've gone along.
So when does Frederick Bencosme get real prospect recognition? That's from You've Been Nowhere on YouTube?
Now, right now, do it.
Yeah, I was going to say, again, sign up for Patreon and listen to our top 50 update because, man, this kid is putting on a show. He is being legendary right now. I would say he's just finding ways to get on base. He's walking. He's got to fill out. Like he's got room on his body to improve his power. But, man, kid just natural baseball player, just knows how to hit, knows how to play the game offensively, defensively. When he got promoted to Delmarva, I was texting with Eric Garfield, and he said this is a kid who has a chance to be the best player on the team in a month, and I'd say he was spot on in that assessment.
Yeah, it's right now.
Yeah, he's smooth out there too, and you can tell he's still very raw, very young, but you can tell the high baseball IQ he has, how smooth he looks out there on the field and at the plate. He's been a pretty patient hitter for a teenager in Delmarva. So I'm very curious to see how high this guy can go. And remember, he was a guy that, when we had Kobe Perez, blank there for a second, we had Kobe Perez on the show. He name dropped Frederick Bencosme unprompted. And so that I was already intrigued by these random Instagram videos, but when Kobe Perez just out of the blue name drops you, I'm filing that name in the back of my head. And so far, playing pretty well in Delmarva.
Hey, he is 19 years old. What do you think his strikeout rate is in full season ball? 7%. You would think a young kid, you usually see these high strikeout rates. Not Mr. Fred. He's walking and striking out at 7% each. So very impressive.
All right. We had the Gene Pinto hype train going, and so I think it's time. Eric, join us with this. It's time to get the Frederick Bencosme. So next year on Fangraphs list, they'll be like, when we ask front office executives, who do we miss out on the Orioles system? It's Frederick Bencosme.
Yeah, it's funny. I think in our preview show, we did like, who's the next Gene Pinto? We didn't think about Frederick Bencosme. It could be a hitter the whole time. Oh, yeah, I have one more. Let's see.
This one is from Bill. Did I miss any speculation on when Heston Kjerstad will get moved up? We didn't talk about it earlier in this show. We've kind of been waiting and seeing with Kjerstad, but it's probably a good prompt. Do either one of you think that we're going to see him promoted soon?
I do think it'll be soon. It's not right now. I think they just want to get him consistent at bats. Clearly, he is too good for the level. I don't think it's necessarily about proving, he's too good for this level like it was with guys we talked about earlier. But I think it's just about just being consistent, maybe let him stay in one place for longer than a few weeks and just get comfortable. I think he'll definitely be pushed up at the very latest by the time the new draft class comes into form and gets bumped up to Delmarva, but probably even before that. I'd say another couple of weeks, but it's coming.
I was shocked he didn't get called up this weekend, to be honest. I get it's been a long time since he played, but you guys had Sam Jelinek on, and if you were listening to this, you're still listening to this episode this far, you're amazing, and we love you. But if you did not listen to Sam Jelinek episode, go back and listen to that one because that was a fantastic interview, and it seemed like the Orioles, from Sam's point of view, what he was told, that the Orioles were going to be extremely cautious with him. And we saw that as well. 7 innings in the field, DHing, days off. I mean, the guy immediately after that interview went out and played full 9 innings in right field. And he's been doing that consistently. So I just don't see why he's not up at this point. That's the one. I'm conservative when it comes to promoting guys. I say that over and over again. But with Kjerstad, bring him up to Aberdeen. The kid's healthy. The kid's ready to go. And he's clearly hungry. So feed him.
I just wonder if they want him to end the year in Aberdeen. That maybe they think if they bring him up now that he's just going to hit too well and they're going to have to kind of rush him to do it. I don't know. I'm trying to find reasons because, I was surprised as well. But clearly they have a plan with him, I guess.
Yeah. It's just good that he's doing this.
Yeah.
Exactly, and that's a huge win for the Orioles. I don't think it's going to be a whole lot longer before we see him in Aberdeen. I don't have an exact date in mind, but I don't think he's going to be in high A, or excuse me, low A, a whole lot longer. Any more questions?
No, I think that's it.
All right, so we'll go into our final segment now, and I'll start this week because we got to mention a guy who was also promoted on Monday, and that was Ryan Higgins, who's taking the leap from Delmarva to Aberdeen. And the thing that's been interesting is that Higgins has not had an opportunity to play for an extended time since he was drafted last year. Missed time last summer with an injury, missed some time this year with injury, but he hit really well last week, shortly after coming off the IL. And the one thing we've heard about with Higgins is the power is kind of intriguing. So the Orioles must have felt like now that he's healthy, he's ready to take that next step and go to high A. So I'm curious to see if we see the power take over there. And then for pitcher, I'm going to recognize Morgan McSweeney. He's kind of been on my radar here for a few weeks for this segment, but he's pitching very well at Norfolk right now. He was promoted about the same time as Jordan Westberg and Gunnar Henderson. And if you're looking at someone who could be a bullpen option in the major leagues later this season, I would say keep an eye on McSweeney, who had a solid run at Bowie. Some of his numbers weren't great because of a couple of bad outings early on, but he had really been locked in the time leading up to the promotion. So Vangrass was high on him coming into this season. So good returns so far from McSweeney at AAA, and I'm looking forward to seeing what he does over the next few months.
Love it. My hitter, I'm going to go to the FCL and go Luis Gonzalez. The FCL Orioles are going through a learning process right now, we'll say, to start the year, but a lot of these top prospects are performing well and seem to be adjusting to life stateside pretty well, especially at the plate. But Luis Gonzalez was a guy who is standing out to me in these box scores, right? He's in the last 4 games. So just last week, he hit 272 with 7 walks in 4 games. You go back 2 more days when he snapped an extended hitless streak. He's got 7 hits in his last 6 games. He's raised his average from 091 to 220 in the on-base percentage, from 231 to 385. This is over the course of a week. He does have at least 1 strikeout in every game this year. So that is a potential red flag, but he's just 19, and there was a lot of hype around Gonzalez going back 2 years now, I think. So hopefully he's starting to settle in there and he can turn a corner in the year in Delmarva. And for my pitcher, I'm going to the bullpen. I was just going to say Bowie's bullpen. There are a lot of guys, but I'm going to go Tyler Birch. I thought this would be a good opportunity to highlight some good Bowie pitching because it has been rocky at many points this season, but Zach Peak has been on a roll this month. Noah Denoyer is just dominating everybody. Justin Armbruster had a good debut. Drew Rom had a fantastic outing his last time out. He's missed some time. He's working his way back. Hopefully he's there now. And relievers like Connor Loprich, Easton Lucas, shout out to all those guys. But Tyler Birch was a guy who threw 4 1/3 scoreless innings this week, 1 hit, no walks, 4 strikeouts. And he was someone highlighted by Matt Blood personally before the season started. So although it hasn't been a great season for him overall this year, maybe this past week was a turning point. And like we mentioned before, when Matt Blood goes on record about a guy, I'm going to pay attention. And so hopefully the second half of the season goes much better for Tyler Birch than the first half did.
Yes, and I'll go with Norberth Romero. He had a great week for Delmarva, hit 3 home runs, 10 RBIs, and he just continues to surprise me with the power that he's shown. It's hard to believe this is the guy we got back from Andrew Kashner, and he's basically the same exact age as Kobe Mayo, and we got him 3 years ago. It's amazing. But he's got pretty good metrics as well on the season. He's got a fairly low BABIP for someone that is his speed, so I think you could even see his average go up with some better luck. But he's got an 8.7 walk percentage, which is around average, maybe slightly above, and he's striking out less than 20% at 19.3%. His ISO is 161. These are all good numbers for a 20-year-old in low A, and he plays solid defense, 98 WRC plus. Just an encouraging start for him, and especially coming off a good week, I thought I'd highlight him. And we were talking about the next Gene Pinto. Well, there might be a left-handed version that just got promoted to Delmarva with Davy Cruz. They're the same height, 5'11". Davy Cruz is 18 years old, doesn't turn 19 until February. So that puts him ahead of Pinto's timeline, actually. And this is a guy who had a 5.2 ERA in the DSL last year, but a FIP in xFIP in the low threes. He struck out 12.5 batters per nine. He is another guy that has gotten ground balls. He had a 50% ground ball rate this year in the FCL with a 2.77 ERA, almost 12 batters striking out per nine. And he had his first low A appearance, gave up 1 run over 3 innings with 3 strikeouts. So excited to see him get his start at such a young age in full season ball. And Bill Duck did have one more question. I'm going to be the guy that just keeps bringing up questions throughout this entire show.
Okay, so question here from Bill. Well, I guess technically I didn't ask a question about Creed Williams. Seriously, are we worried about his hit tool or his lack of conditioning?
I'll take this one first. Again, this is an 18-year-old kid. And I think, let's see, if he started the season in FCL, that would have been perfectly normal or even ahead of schedule as far as his timeline is. And if he, I don't know, I just feel like the Orioles drafted him and gave him a $1 million signing bonus for a reason. They saw something in the underlying metrics when he went to Camden Yards and was mashing home runs out there that they liked. They liked the leadership abilities, the what he has behind the plate potentially. And I think they're pushing him and letting him struggle at full season ball at this age for a reason. I think it's kind of like they want him to realize what he's got to work on. I think they think he can handle it because honestly, it could be him and Samuel Basayo behind the plate every day in the FCL this entire year, and no one will blink an eye. So I'm not worried. He's got so much time to develop. I think this is just a learning experience that they think he can handle, and we'll see where he goes with it.
Yeah, my only thing with Creed is that he is a teenager and he is a catcher, that they're working with him behind the plate full time right now. No talk of him moving to the outfield or first base anytime soon, at least. And so the fact that he's learning how to catch, that pitching staff in Delmarva has been wrecked by injuries, promotions, guys going up and down between FCL, Delmarva to Aberdeen. So constantly a new staff there in Delmarva. The language barrier, I don't know how much Spanish Creed speaks, but you have a lot of guys on that FCL roster or Delmarva roster who I would assume know very limited English. And so there's probably a language barrier there as well. There's just a lot of factors that go into this. And catchers, it takes catchers much longer to develop than everybody else. So yeah, not concerned. Give me 2 years with Creed before I'm going to start to be concerned. Like Bob said, this organization clearly saw something in him. Otherwise, they're not going to give this 18-year-old kid over $1 million. I'm sure there was a 22-year-old college bat that they would have loved to draft and stuck in Aberdeen's outfield last year if they really wanted to. But when you look at the other high school selections this organization has made, I think that also gives Creed some leeway here as well. Look at how well Carter Balmer's done in Delmarva coming off Tommy John surgery. Kobe Mayo, they're hitting on these high school picks so far early on in their careers. A lot of ways to go here, I will admit that, but showing high school picks with a lot of promise. So just let Creed settle in. I think he'll be okay. And it's just going to take longer.
And Nick, you hit the nail on the head. It's a much different process with catchers. It's a much different experience than what Gunnar Henderson had to go through when he got to Delmarva last year, or what Kobe Mayo had to go through when he got there last summer. Catchers, kind of by nature take a little bit longer to develop. And you add in the fact that Williams is this young, right out of high school. And like you said, they're not grooming him to move him to first base or the outfield or be a full-time DH right now. They're grooming him to catch every day and deal with like you said, a challenging situation with the pitching staff, a lot of movement there this year. So hasn't had the opportunity to maybe catch the same guys consistently. So I think Williams is going to be fine in the long run. You got to give him a little bit of leeway because it's a tough process for catchers.
Yeah. When you have the older guys too, like Drew Robb, Adley Rutschman, with the praise that they rained out on Creed, that's comforting too, to know that as well. And I mean, hey, if catching doesn't work out, like, can't the guy throw like 95 miles an hour off the mound? So I mean, maybe you got a two-way player there with Creed as well. That he's got a strong enough arm, and we've seen it behind the plate this year as well. There are going to be options there with Creed too, if catching doesn't happen to work out in the long run.
And kind of like with what, what was his name? The Baseball America guy that was a little negative that we had on the show.
Kyle Glaser.
Like he said about Samuel Basayo. In 6 years, he'll be 24, the same age as Adley Rutschman is now. So same with Creed Willem. So yeah, let's give him some leeway, give him some time to develop physically and skill wise. And yeah, he could be here in 5 years and still be in Double A and still be perfectly like normal development path.
That's mind blowing. 6 years and he'll still be 24 years old. Wow. I'll be 45 and bald. Next
I'll
question.
probably be dead.
Well, on that pleasant note, we'll wrap up this week's episode of On the Verge. We will be back next week at a different time. We'll observe the 4th of July holiday on Monday and then be back with our main show the same time Tuesday night with our mid-season roundup. In the meantime, continue to follow us on Twitter at BSL On the Verge. Check out BaltimoreSportsAndLife.com for all the latest Ravens, Orioles, college sports coverage, and more. Bob and Nick both have recent pieces on the site that you should definitely read. And be sure to hop on the message board and join the discussion with fellow readers of the site as well as contributors to BSL. Thank you to Matt Porticelli for appearing on tonight's episode. For Bob Phelan, Nick Stevens, and Zach Sweden, this is Zach Sweden. You've been listening to On the Verge.